Welcome to Terror, Historias Reales with Christopher, where true horror comes to life. In today's episode, we uncover the chilling real story of Donovan Snyder, whose job at a haunted attraction in Pennsylvania took a terrifying turn. What he thought was just another spooky gig quickly spiraled into a nightmarish encounter with shadowy figures, eerie apparitions, and a dark presence that followed him home. This isn't just another ghost story. It's a real life experience that will make you question what's lurking in the dark. Stay tuned because by the end, you might just feel like you're being watched. Dare to listen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and sharing story with your friends for more real horror stories. Let's get started. Do you know of someone with a real life terrifying story? I'm looking for spine chilling experiences told in English for our channel, Terror, Historias Reales with Christopher. And if you or someone you know has a haunting tale to share, I want to hear it. My contact information is on every single episode. You can reach me via email, Instagram, or through our Facebook page. And if you want to hear just how dark these stories can get, find our show called Terror Historias Reales with Christopher. My name is Donovan Snyder, born and raised in a small town just outside of York or Gettysburg. I grew up in a very religious family. We were Brethren, which is a branch of Christianity very similar to Mennonite. As I got older, I grew away from the church, per se. I still have my faith in God and all that, but it definitely pulled away as I got older. Growing up in the late 90s or early 2000s, just like most kids, I got into the horror aspect of movies and liked to be spooked and scared and all that. I would watch Ghost Adventures with my brothers. That was something we always liked to do. That thrill of the paranormal was always there while I was growing up. I think I was about 14 or 15. Before I could get a real job in town, there was a little haunted attraction here close to where we live. At the time, it was called the Haunted Mill. A lot of people local to Pennsylvania know about it. Yeah. They took volunteers, and then you got paid through the month of October. At the end of the month, you got paid for volunteering. But anyhow, I was in the one area at the time. It was called the Dark Zone, and it was just a barn pretty much. And it was set up like a maze, and people would go through. I was working in the one area, they called it the psycho ward, where there was a cage and there was a long hallway that came in and a long hallway that led out. The long hallway that led out was pitch black. Doing my job, I chased somebody down the long hallway, and it was very late at night. I think it was about 1 in the morning because that's how late it would be open. After I chased that person around, I had to turn back and get to my post. While I'm coming back, there is a trapdoor in that hallway that led to the entrance hallway. That door opened, and when that door opens, it lets light into the hallway. When that door opened and I saw that light, I saw, an outline of a person. And it looked like they were beckoning me to come through the door. So I hurried up and I went to go through the door. Next thing I know, I'm back in the psycho area, like I faced through the door, like it was never open. And I was so tired and I was just like, maybe they shut the door before I got there. But as I got older, and I think back to that instance, it was very strange. While I worked there, my friends worked in the far side of the barn, the Darkstone, and they worked in the toxic area. The one kid named Wesley, he experienced what he told me was an apparition floating in the rafters of the barn that he could see just slowly, just almost circling above him. Nobody else saw it, only he saw it. And I remember that night that he saw it, he quit. He never came back, understandably. Over a decade later, I'm back here in Mangotsville. I live right across from Haunted Mill. And I went and I took a ghost tour that they had. Out of curiosity, I went back to the dark zone, which is now called the House of Ice. The layout is all changed, but I still remember in my head those areas, the back left corner and the middle to the right. As I'm talking to the investigators, they informed me that the two areas that I told them about are the two areas they've had the most activity. Okay, there was something going on. I did see something. My friend Wesley, he also saw something. And what they also told me at that time that I didn't know was apparently a little boy was working up on the rafters or playing up on the roof of the rafters. He felt it was death. Once again, the click. He saw the apparition up in the rafters. That blew my mind a little bit. That caught me off guard. A lot of people, like even the hunters themselves, told me of what they'd seen. They had what they called stick figure, or I forget what they called it, but it was like a stick figure that they caught on camera. A very long stick figure that was very tall in the room, right above where the kid felt it was death. As far as I know, several people in this area have all had experiences. There's actually other parts of the mill that all have reports of activity. That's why a lot of people are attracted to this area, because they're very interested in the paranormal. My parents always told me the one thing that you never do is try to communicate with things from the other side, because they're very religious. But all they ever told me to fear, really, because they didn't really believe in ghosts, was, of course, demons. To this day, never. I've never tried the Ouija board, and I wouldn't even dream of it. It's just something that my parents didn't even teach me that. It's just something that I feel like I know. I know personally that I should not communicate with the other side. Just a personal preference. I have nothing against the people that do. Somebody has to venture forth and find out the unknown. I was at a friend's house. I was about 16, 17 years old, and they tried to break out the Ouija board. When I think back to it, I got pretty mad at them. I remember not yelling at the top of my lungs, but I said, if you use that right now, I'm going to leave. And they're like, okay, we won't use it. I found out later that they did use it after I left. The one kid, he got really scared, and he left afterwards, and he told me, you're right, Donna, we never should have used that thing. I'm not going to tell you I told you so, but sometimes you've got to be careful with that stuff. I guess in my mid-20s, 23, 24, I went through a divorce. I was in a pretty dark area of that time, and my interest in learning and hearing about stories grew. It's almost like my friends and people that would hang around always had a story, like an instance with the paranormal. And it was very interesting to me that it's almost like I drew these people to me, and they would tell me their stories, and I found it very interesting. On my ex-wife, she had a story where when they were younger, the basement was extremely haunted, and they knew for a fact that it was something malicious. And her mother went down there and rebuked it several times. I think they ended up having to move. I don't believe they were able to get that entity out of there, but I remember hearing that and just thinking, wow, that's scary stuff. When you hear it and you have an experience, because at this time I didn't have any actual experience personally. Flash forward to 2023, this is in the new year, I met my now wife, Sydney. We were dating for roughly 4 or 5 months. She had just started the field work for her occupational therapy training for college. So when she did that, we moved in together. But we were staying a few nights at her mother's house and a few nights at my apartment, which was in Mangus Mills, right across from the haunted mill. And I should note that I assumed I would have activity here at my apartment, but I didn't, which is very fortunate. It's like right across the street you'd think somebody would wander over. At her mother's house, so I'll tell you this little in-depth. Her one night they were having dinner, and her mom proceeded to tell me, as my curiosity of the paranormal came out, and I asked them just casually, have you experienced anything? And she immediately hit back with, oh yes, actually in this house. And I said, right here? She said, yeah, actually we've had lights flicker, we've had the one DVD cabinet out in the living room, which was connected right to the dining room, right where we were. She said that used to open on its own, unexplained. She said a friend of hers, they have a little porch area outside of the kitchen. It's like a small Cape Cod house, so it's 3 stories. It's the basement, the middle section, and then the top, where all the bedrooms are. But there's a little screened-in porch just outside. There's a window looking into it from the dining room, and then there's a door leading out to it from the kitchen. She said her and her friend were out there just hanging out, looking out at the birds and squirrels and all that. And all of a sudden her friend apparently noticed a figure in the garage window straight ahead. They told me that it was a shadow figure. Apparently, I just found out that she saw an actual face looking right at me. I wasn't really scared. I was almost excited to hear about it. But once again, I didn't want to stir anything up or challenge it or anything like that. But her stepfather chimed in. He said, yeah, there was a time where she was away, and I was in the living room, and I heard the door to the basement slam shut. Very loudly, he said it, like he thought there was somebody in the house. And he's got a lot of guns, so he did what anyone would do. Got his gun, started upstairs, cleared the upstairs, cleared the main floor, and then went down to the basement. Nobody. There was nobody in the house. He checked everywhere, but he knows for a fact. And apparently he's had several experiences, so it didn't shake him at all. But I'm just there at the dinner table thinking, wow, this is pretty crazy. Shortly after that, I would say probably 3 weeks to a month, we set up shop in the basement. Of course, that's just the only free room they had. We had our bed down there. We put some LEDs on the wall, and it was a very large room, a lot of space. And then, like most basements, there was a support beam in the middle, the dead center of the room. And then to the right of that support beam, to the left, if you're facing from the staircase, to the left of that support beam was a little cabinet going from the support beam to the wall. So it was like a little prep area where you could fold your laundry and all that. And then to the right was just nothing but a big area where we had a little table set up in the right corner. And then straight ahead, lined up with that support beam, is where we had our king bed that we set up. Well, there was only one light into the basement, as most basements are set up, where you turn on from when you walk down, you turn it on. So we'd always turn that light off and have the LEDs lit up so we could, have a little bit of light. So we were in pitch black. Something that started happening is we would come back from work and we'd get done dinner, and the LEDs would be a different color. We always kept them on purple or light blue, and they would change to red, blue, dark blue, orange for some reason. And we didn't know why. We didn't really look into it too much. It didn't really startle me that much. At first I thought it was her changing the lights. Had a little powwow and said, "Oh hey, you're not changing the lights. I'm not changing the lights. Who's changing the lights?" We did eventually find out that it was her brother also had LEDs, and his lights would change hours without us knowing. We did not know that at the time, so it was still startling to us, and it ties into what happens to me and sets the stage a little bit. Shortly after the whole dinner scenario, I'd say it was about 2 to 3 weeks, we were going to bed, and she went to bed first. She fell asleep first, and I was watching TV. I should note that Sydney talks in her sleep a lot. She will just have conversations like she's at work. Just say odds and ends things. Nothing too wild. I've got used to it. I eventually nod off. The TV was left on, and it's a TV that doesn't auto shut off. So next thing I know, I'm having a dream, an out-of-body experience dream where I'm in the right corner of the basement to the right of our bed, and I specifically remember coming to and seeing us in bed. I looked to the left and I saw us laying in bed, and I remember feeling happy. I'm like, man, hey, there we are. But all of a sudden I look over towards the stairs, right where that support beam is, which is only a few feet away from the end of our bed. And all of a sudden I just see a few black figures staring directly at the bed where we were sleeping, where I just looked at us. And I remember in the dream I froze, and I was just staring directly at it, wondering, what in the world, what is this? I was frozen in fear in the dream, and next thing I know, it slowly turns its head towards me in the corner and looks directly at me. And when that happened, I instantly woke up in bed, and when I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, and it was not. We were in the basement. It's very cold down there. I didn't sweat that often. I wasn't even hardly under the covers, and I was drenched in sweat, my eyes wide open. And the first thing I noticed, oh my goodness, the lights are off. It's pitch black down here. I couldn't see a thing. And I just had this dream. I'm looking straight up in bed, as anyone would if they woke up. I didn't jump up. My eyes just flung open. Just the palpable fear, not danger. I didn't feel like I was in danger. I just felt like someone was checking out what's going on. But I didn't look forward because I didn't want to give a presence. I didn't want to give it a type of power, like I actually recognized it. But before I know what's going on, before I can even gather my thoughts, all of a sudden, Sydney, to the left of me, springs up in bed, straight up in the little slouch forward, like sitting straight up, looking dead ahead, right at the post, and says, "What the hell is that?" As she slowly points forward, I said, "What do you see? What's there? What is it?" And I didn't look ahead. I looked directly at her to the side, to the left. And then she slowly lowered her hand and slumped back in bed and started snoring right afterward. At this point, I was just like, okay, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just completely, my mind is just thinking like, what in the world's happening? I was very scared because I never had anything like this happen. I feel like most of everyone's had the out-of-body dreams, but anytime that I have those, it's never been anything where I see something and then in the same room, let alone, and then snap back to reality, and then the stuff happens. I've never experienced anything like that. So I remember I just said, you know what? Just try to go to bed, I said, because if you get up, you got to go all the way over and turn the lights on. Just leave it be. Obviously doesn't want to hurt you. Just leave it be. After probably what felt 2 or 3 hours, I think I finally managed to go back to sleep and I woke up. Of course, the first thing I said when I woke up, Sydney woke up with me. And I said, "Do you remember anything of what happened last night?" And she said, "No." "Why are the lights off?" I was like, "I don't know. But do you remember jumping up in bed and pointing and saying, 'What the hell is that?'" And she said, "No, I don't remember anything." I should also say that she did burn incense in that basement before we moved in. So I feel like if it was a malicious spirit, I feel like it would have been either sated a little bit or flushed out. But like I said, I didn't feel anything malicious or evil. But what I did feel was that I felt like it was a man. Definitely felt like almost like a man checking on, "Hey, why are these people in my basement?" It like confused of why there's people at his house. That's what it felt like to me. I did later find out after I told them that her mom never told me this, of course, but her sister did. She said, yeah, they actually found an unmarked grave back behind the house, a little bit away from the garage. Whereas they saw the face. Her friend saw the face in the garage window. We visit a lot. I still look in the garage and I try to see if I can catch him in the like peeking at us. Not in a quirky way, just because of curiosity. But after that happened, I was shooken up. I had issues sleeping there for the first few weeks, but I eventually got over it. Just as soon as I got over it, about 3 weeks later, same thing. Sydney went to bed and I was watching TV and I was slowly starting to doze off. And all of a sudden I hear something right up against my ear. It sounded like one of two things, but what I feel like it was come out here. I looked around at this point. I woke her up. I wasn't too concerned about making them out. I said, "Did you hear that?" And she said, "What?" I was like, "I swear, I just heard somebody say in my ear, 'Come out here.'" And she's like, "I didn't hear anything." I was just like, "Of course not." Yeah. At this point, I feel like he may have been outside in the garage at the time. And maybe he was trying to reach out to me and communicate with me and make himself known. "Hey, I'm out here, if you want to come hang out and see me." But of course, I did not interact. That's just how I am, how I was told, how I feel. Sydney told me that her father-in-law got a metal detector and they've been metal detecting out back behind the house. It was like an old dump. Apparently they found medicine bottles from the late 1800s back there. So whoever is buried back there could be a pretty old soul. If you or anyone, has a story to share in English, let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and sharing story with your friends for more real horror stories. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon.